I have a PowerPoint presentation. I hope that it will be displayed. While that is being done, I want to thank the ADB on behalf of the Executive Secretary of ECA, Clava Gatete, for inviting us to this meeting. A couple of speakers already have spoken about the African continental free trade area. This morning, what I want to do is to look at the implications of the continental free trade area for demand of transport infrastructure and services. We know that the relationship between trade and transport is two-way. While transport can facilitate trade, trade can also provide investment opportunities for transport infrastructure and services. So we want to look this morning at the second dimension. How would the African continental free trade area, what investment opportunities it will provide for transport? What I'm going to present, and hopefully the PowerPoint will come up very soon, are the findings of our work that ECA did in 2020. The baseline was 2019, and the horizon is 2030. So now I do have the presentation on the screen. Could we move to the next slide, please? Myself, what you see on that slide are the projections from ECA research. We find out that the African continental free trade area, if we implement it, would result to about 40% increase in intra-African trade by 2045. And we see this increase across different sectors. Agri-food, we see an increase of about 41%. Services, about 39%. Same with industry, 39%. A modest increase in mining, about 16%. But basically, if you take a deeper dive, what are the subsectors that we expect growth? Let me focus on services. We see that tourism and transport is going to experience significant growth as a result of the continental free trade area. In fact, we're estimating about 50% increase in transport services if the continental free trade area is implemented. Now, for industry, I just want to focus on the subsector of vehicles and transport equipment. We are seeing growth in that sector, and this, of course, is linked to transport. Again, we see growth in refined oil. That is, again, no surprise, because if we have more transport, we anticipate more use of oil. But we have to take this with a pinch of salt, because now of ongoing efforts to green our economy. So we're doing everything we can do, member states, international organizations, to cut down the use of refined oil. Now, these are the questions very quickly that we seek to answer. How will implementation of the continental free trade area affect demand for transport infrastructure and services? 2, what would be the demand for different modes of transport? What are the implications for investment in infrastructure development? We will see some figures. And finally, what would be the infrastructure and equipment needs for different transport modes? For instance, how many trucks would we need? How many aircraft would we need? How many rail wagons, maritime vessels to accommodate the anticipated increase in trade flows in Africa? Now, I will just go to, I'm not going to details of the research, but just the findings going through the different modes of transport, starting with road. Just to say that in terms of infrastructure, we have just under 3 million kilometers of roads in Africa. This is quite small compared to the US, for instance, where you have over 6 million kilometers of road. Today, we know that we are transporting about 200 million tons of goods by road, and we are projecting this figure to move to about 400 million tons of goods if the continental free trade area is fully implemented. But these are the implications for equipment in terms of truck. And so if we fully implement the continental free trade area, we see that we will need over 2 million additional trucks between now and 2030. This is a lot of investment opportunities. A lot of that would be for bulk cargo, but we also see some demand for container cargo. But very quickly, perhaps I should explain the scenario that we look at. Scenario S1 is a scenario where we implement the continental free trade area, but we don't do anything about our current infrastructure. The second scenario we investigated is the scenario where we implement the free trade area, but we also implement our regional programs like PIDA, the Trans-African Highways, the regional projects of the regional economic community. So those are the two scenarios that I would like to focus here. And you could see the first three bars is the baseline. So that was the situation in 2019. So we needed just about 698,000 trucks. But scenario one, if we implement the free trade area, you will see that the demand by 2030 rises to about 1.8 million trucks for bulk cargo. And if you move to the right-hand side, it will rise to about 248,000 for container cargo, making altogether the demand of about 2 million trucks, which is a huge investment opportunity. Now, in terms of sub-regional demand, we're seeing that the bulk of that demand would be within the West African region. About 39% of these 2 million trucks we're talking about, the demand is here in West Africa. But also we see demands for trucks moving from West to Southern Africa, also from South into West Africa. In essence, this is the bilateral trade between regions that we are seeing. Now, moving quickly to rail, I think to say that Africa's railway is pretty much underdeveloped, it's old, in many cases dilapidated. Today it carries less than 1% of trade on the continent, about 0.3%. But we're seeing that if we implement the continental free trade area, this may move to about 7%. Not much, but that's significant. But in terms of demand for rail wagons, we are seeing over 150,000 new wagons demanded for by 2030 if the continental free trade area is implemented. This is huge opportunities for countries, I believe, like South Africa, that are interested in manufacturing rail wagons. Moving quickly to where we are seeing this demand, again, West Africa, we are seeing a huge demand. For the over 150,000 additional wagon, we are predicting 48% of this would be in West Africa, Southern Africa 19.6%, and within North Africa 11.5%. These are the regions really that you have relatively developed railways on the continent. Moving quickly to maritime transport, I think just to say that we don't say it enough. Today, more than 20%, about 22% of intra-African trade is already happening by maritime transport, and which is not surprising, given that close to 40 African countries are maritime countries, and there's a huge potential, in fact, to see more intra-African trade by sea. And if we look at the regions that we are seeing significant demand for maritime transport for intra-African trade, we see 35% of this additional wagon in Northern Africa. We see some demand for maritime intra-African trade between North and East Africa, but also between North Africa and West Africa, and moving very quickly to air transport, and I've seen major air transport stakeholders in the room already. What we are predicting is that if we fully implement the continental free trade area, by 2030, we are going to anticipate 250 additional cargo aircraft. This is huge investment opportunity as well, and this does not even include the additional aircraft that we would need if we fully implement the single African air transport market, and obviously the Yamoussoukro decision for the implementation for liberalizing air transport markets on the continent. And I think that I see the moderator coming towards me, signaling that I should move quickly. Within West Africa, we're going to see growth in demand for aircraft. Same with North Africa and West Africa, connection between those regions. And also within Southern Africa, we are expecting to see growth there. And I'm moving. This is just the cost. This is the last but one slide. In terms of cost, we think that we would need 360 billion US dollars investment to get those over 2 million trucks. For railways, we will need about 36 billion USD for those additional wagons. For airplanes, it's about 25 billion USD. And maybe I'll just end with some implications. And this is the last slide. Obviously, I hope I've demonstrated the huge investment requirements in transport. I didn't talk much about infrastructure, but we identified about 60,000 kilometers of critical links. These are links that, if nothing is done, will not be able to accommodate the anticipated increase in trade flows. And then investment opportunities in battery industry, no time to talk about that. But if we were to manufacture some of those 2 million trucks on the continent, there's opportunity for battery electric vehicles. And finally, let me end by saying that we could harness global partnerships. I think there's a global gateway. There's the FOCAC recently. One of the declarations was investment in 30 infrastructure projects. Our plea is that let's try to align these investments that are coming from out of the continent with our priorities here to support the AFCFTA. And let me stop there, and thank you for your attention.